My friend claims to love God, but continues in a gay lifestyle. How do I handle this?
This is becoming an ever more common question, and I hear it just in conversation with people. I like to go to the Bible. I hope that is all right with everybody. We believe the Bible gives us answers to these kind of questions. So I like to read there. Let me see here, the letter to Titus. For the grace of God has appeared, bringing salvation to all people, instructing us to deny ungodliness and worldly desires and to live sensibly, righteously, and godly in this present age. So whenever we detect what we consider to be ungodly living, we got to remember that we don't save people. We don't change people's lives. Sometimes preachers think that they're changing people's lives. Sometimes people say, oh, to a preacher, they say, oh, you changed my life. But really, it is God's grace and God's love that changes us. And here Paul says it causes us to live godly. So I'll give you, just off the top of my head, 3 things that I would suggest to this person. Was it Drea?
Drea, yep.
First of all, love the person. Love the person. Don't withdraw. Don't disconnect. And don't feel like you need to discuss this topic of the gay lifestyle all the time. Don't feel you're there representing God's love. Number 2, be bold about your answers. When you're asked, what do you think of the way I live? Speak your convictions. Don't hold back. But then trust Jesus Christ. Whatever things I've seen where people have had drastic changes in lives it's been, I had to trust Jesus, actually trust that the gospel works. So don't feel this need to constantly bring up this topic so it becomes such a bone of contention, such a concern that you can't even relate to this person anymore. It's not your job to save. It's not my job to save and change people's lives. Our job is to present Jesus Christ and trust in Him. And so trust that God is at work in the person, and then let's see what God will do. That would be my advice, and I hope that helps Drea there. What else have you got?
That's awesome. And so the next question comes from Josh. And Josh says, a loved one committed suicide. Is there any hope that I will see them in heaven?
Again, my earliest recollection was in the little town where we lived. We were church folks. There was a lady who committed suicide. I remember I was just a young boy, and I remember hearing the conversation. I was quite shocked by it. I felt compassionate, and I thought some would suggest, oh, she's not in heaven, and I've thought about that. And I would say suicide would be maybe the symptom of a mental illness. Or it could be, we could call it a deception, and we know who the deceiver is. So I wouldn't say that person is not in heaven. I would say expect to meet them in heaven, because I would say also if someone has another illness, a physical illness or a deception in another area, maybe somebody is deceived in some other area of their life, deceived with pride maybe, or something else. We have to trust that God's grace is what brings people to heaven. So if that person was trusting Jesus, but then they were overtaken by an emotional illness and by let's not limit God's grace. Let's not make it smaller than what Jesus has made it. And so I think, what's important is that the person has trusted in the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ. And then warts and all, whatever faults and failures that we have, we expect to be in heaven on the basis of what Jesus has done. So I hope that helps.
Absolutely.
Someone. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now we're going to go ahead and pivot to a little bit of a hot topic, and that has to do with vaccinations. And so Nina messages in and she says there are so many opinions about vaccines. What is the church's stance on vaccines?
Well, first of all, I suppose if you have children, you can hardly send them to school unless they're vaccinated. So let me answer this probably in a way that's going to make me unpopular. I don't think the church should have a stance on everything. So I would say any preacher who claims he has a stance, he ought to shut up and be quiet, mind his own business. My stance is that every person should follow the conviction of their own heart. Talk to Jesus who lives in you. Maybe he will lead one person to be vaccinated, another not. And of course, there's a general concern if a vaccine comes too quickly, hasn't been tested, there can be concerns, they're legitimate concerns. But I appreciate the question. I appreciate the question, but I want to say to the questioner, don't have an expectation that the church or preachers should just make a statement on every issue. Where we are not trained to make statements. I'm trained to make statements when it comes to God, His gospel. When I talk in many areas, I speak quite freely. So I would say, you talk to the Lord and let the Lord direct you. And maybe if you have children who wouldn't even be allowed in the school, you better have them vaccinated. I would leave it at that. I probably didn't make anybody happy there, but anyhow, I spoke my mind. And we call this straight talk, so I'm giving you straight from the hip.
Absolutely, and we know that the COVID-19 has affected so many people's daily lives and how we live in society, and so that's where Sylvia messages in, and she says, with the government threatening more shutdowns, is there anything I can do? Another shutdown will be catastrophic for my family.
Well, that last line in her question there, another shutdown will be catastrophic for my family, that tells me that there's some pain, there's some hurt there. And I would say make your thoughts known. Call your member of parliament, call your member of provincial legislature. Let people know, because there are a lot of side effects. We understand that every life is precious. If a life is taken because of a virus, that's just very sad. If another life is taken because due to isolation, they were overcome with deception, as in suicide, that's all sad. I would say speak up, and I feel this sense of people are afraid to speak their mind, and so don't be afraid of it.